Okay, that was the last video for this session. And now I think I leave the microphone to Julien Schechter for the roundtable and discuss with the different authors and the other people that are here today.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Very interesting papers today again. And thank you all for being also here to discuss them. It's really cool to have you around to discuss your papers and the ideas. The name we've given to this roundtable is Games Are Engaging and Immersive. Good games with a good story are, right? That's the question I will ask you today. But are they engaging you in the gaming experience or in the matter that they are gamifying? And that's one of the provocative questions that I want to ask first, all three of you, the authors that are here today, because the question that we can have, and it's true with the last presentation also of Atsushi Yamaji, will the children remember playing the game, or will they remember the instruments and the sounds that they made and the history behind? Or in your other subjects, will they remember the streets of La Chaux-de-Fonds, or will they remember the story and the one who stole the watch? And what is really important behind gamifying or making a serious game about something is that you create emotions. We've seen that also in the other roundtables. But these emotions, what will they create as a memory, as the knowledge that is behind? I don't know who wants to go first, but that's my first question. Will you remember the gaming experience or the things behind the game, the things that you gamified? Who wants to go first? Aloik, maybe?
Oh yeah, it will be short. Thank you for the question. And I think for us, the way we create games is what is important for us is to create emotions to improve the memorization process. But then after the game and the visits, if they can remember just the content and not the game, it's all right for us. I mean, the founding and the reason of the project is that they remember something after the game. And so that's the point. The game is a way to improve the memorization, the fun, and everything to be sure that they will be more aware of what happened during the visits. But after that, it's not that important that they remember the game for us.
Yes, but the game being fun is maybe easier to remember than the things that are behind that. What do you think about that, Lisa?
Well, I think that there's it's obviously a blend and a balance in different times and spaces between them. But I think one of the things that we really tried to work on through this kind of progressive iteration of all these books in this series and then board games and other things is that we're really creating a narrative that can support all these kinds of interactions and this kind of story that it's kind of the basis that engages the kids. They get interested in thinking about following the story and recognizing characters, and the game mechanic is actually quite simple with the AR application, similar to the last one. You scan and characters pop up and do whatever, but part of it is this whole kind of imaginative world we've created around it and the connections with lots of historical artifacts or historical sites or so on. So it's this balance between that. But I would hope that what they're thinking about, I mean, they're having fun, but then they're learning something in a playful kind of way. So it's important that they do get some of the content and they do understand a little bit more about their region and the histories. Yes and no.
To go a little further in the provocative way, are we luring people? Like, we are giving them crumbles to follow and they follow the crumbles, but really, did they see the big picture? What do you think about that, Mathieu?
Thank you for the question. Well, my project, I guess, is a little bit different from others because it's not a game. There are no really rules. There is not really a narrative or a story to follow. They're just a bunch of little dinosaurs like the one behind me, hidden throughout the city. And well, I used toyification for exactly this sort of project because I wanted people not to engage the game, but to engage the city. And both the people that were hiding the dinosaurs and people that would find them somehow would be engaged not in a system, not in a series of actions, but just in a sort of playful queue. Like, sorry, my battery is died. It was more like, hiding little triggers of playfulness around the city and then leaving to the citizens to decide what to do with them. So we saw people taking pictures, we saw people taking them away, we saw many people that were dying for taking them, but didn't, well, they were too shy to do that because in Finland, people are pretty shy very often. So they were sort of walking around them, looking at them, but then they didn't really take them. And well, that was what I wanted to do with this project, but it was quite interesting that many of the participants say that they would have preferred if it was a game. They would have liked it more if there was more structure, and many of them, they were sort of frustrated because they didn't know what the response from the citizens would be, because we did see some of them doing something, but generally we would just leave the dinosaurs behind. And so there was this curiosity of knowing what happens after that, and sort of wanting to be part of it even after the toyification activity was over. So that was quite interesting for me because I really tried to move in a more sort of anarchistic way of playing, but still the participants wanted more structure. But then I have to say that the participants are gamification experts, so maybe that's also why they wanted more rules, because they have the habit to get a hold on how play goes. But if I have just one more minute, this discussion also remembered me. We made a conference game, an alternate reality game for Gamifin, for this conference about gamification we organize in Finland every year. And well, we divide, this is a proper game with rules, etc. So in which, yes, we're trying to lure people into doing something. And we specifically wanted them to engage with conference materials. So some of the cues or the clues were hidden in the posters, some other in the Discord channel. So they had to engage with the conference to get the answer. And we had also a survey in the end. And most players said that the game didn't distract them from the conference. And we were wondering, is this a good thing? I mean, maybe if the game was very good, they would have been very distracted and they wouldn't have followed the conference at all because they wanted to play the game. So should we be happy that our game didn't disrupt the conference? Or should we, aim higher and try to make games that will make them forget completely about the real context that we're trying to gamify? So this is a provocation to follow your provocation, Julien.
And it's very nice, and we've talked a lot about in these roundtables about how serious should the serious games be, or how fun should they be to fulfill their purpose. I'll open one door that you just nearly opened, the one of the story behind the game, because it's also most of the time said that good games are good games because they have a good game design, and good games because they have a good story. So I want to hear you three also, and I want to remember also the other participants that are listening that they can also intervene at any time, just opening their camera, just raising the hand with the button in Zoom, or just opening the mic and going for it, because we are only 10, 11 people, so we will manage to do that. So anybody who wants to intervene, you're most welcome to do it. It's one of the aim also of these roundtables. So maybe back to you, Lisa, because you did a great job and an important job of the story behind everything, with the characters being even in the cosplay, even on the sites, wherever the story is huge. How important is the story, and how important is the game design in a gamification of these cultural aspects of your project?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I would have to be biased in terms of saying that I think that the story elements, I mean, especially when we were drawing on the tradition of a children's book, kind of already deciding that we were going to use that as a medium for lots of reasons. One of them being that the community partners that we were working with a lot were schools, and they were interested in issues of reading and literacy and all of those things too. So you know, one of the justifications often if you're trying to engage kids in these kinds of things is, you know, is there a deeper purpose? Is it meaningful? You know, are they just going to waste time playing? So you have to give them sort of something to do. Of course, I don't necessarily think of it in those terms, but it was really important for us to think about not even just stories. After a while, it was characters, you know, just really thinking about, because there was a great frame that was the hardest thing to develop. Like, how could we create an open framework so that we could have these series of stories with repeating characters, but that didn't get too boring or repetitive, and that would be context specific for if you move from one municipality to another, you could follow the characters, but you discover new things. And so the hardest part was creating that kind of framework for interaction and meaningful, you know, repeat characters that you could get interested in, and that the kids would get interested in. They want to collect. You know, we did this all before kind of Pokemon Go, but it's got a very Pokemon Go kind of collection to it. So I think it's, you know, again, for the purposes of this, but I would say for the purposes of all of them, the creation of some kind of story that engages has to be there in some kind of a strength. Otherwise, it's just a random.
But in terms,
scavenger.
if I'm going to be more precise, in terms of investments, would you say time and money were spent hugely on the story or on the gamification? Maybe in your project on the story?
Yeah, I mean, I really do think that a lot of it was on the story. And again, it might just be the kinds of ways we were working. I mean, I was working a lot with game writers, for example. So then we were thinking about stories and we were thinking about it. And we had a relatively simple technical application in the sense that, you know, once we got the basics of scanning and pop-ups and things in mobile technologies, we tried to keep it simple so that the story would drive what we had to do. So,
yeah, was it because the story was huge, or was it because you invested a lot in the story and didn't have any money or time left to improve the gaming side?
Okay, you're too smart now. Yeah, that's but of course that's a lot of it, right? It's where can you put the investment? Where do you put the money? And as a project that came to some degree from the university, and I mean, it's negotiated with literally hundreds of people, including students and community organizers and all of that. It went into that as opposed to creating just some kind of fancy technical application where all the money went, and then we simplified that. We did create it as a kind of bare bones something so that we, you know, because we had to. I mean, it's not a hugely funded research project. It's a community regional funded project with a lot of devotion of our own research time through university. So
still looks very nice, and I would have loved to have Tsuchi Yamaji, of course, with us, because we have seen the quality of the game. Just a few pictures we've seen. It's a lot of money, most probably going in the game, and not the story. It would have been interesting. But Loic, what do you think on that? On the story, you had the story with La Chaux de Fonds because the story was there, but still you built a story around the story, which is the stolen watch. So what was the importance of this story on the story and the game design? You just need to open your mic again. Sorry.
Oops, sorry. Yeah. It was very important on the end. We spent way more time than expected on the story, way more, and less time than expected on the game design, I would say. But that was not that bad at the end, because the story is what linked all the part of the game, let's say. But still we don't see it in that video because it's in the other part that was shown last week, unfortunately. But so there are still 15 mini games, observation-based games. So where you have to, I don't know if you can see it, but for example on the card, so you are in the street and you have to watch what is missing for all the stuff, or this kind of example. You have different kind of games, but they are more like take a breath, stop there, watch something special, or learn something, and you have a mini game that lasts maybe 2 minutes, 5 minutes, no more. And then you move to another part of the story. So the story is in that game, the story is really in the center of the game. And the game design and the different games are not that important. I would say you can do them, you can learn with them. That's the link. The mini games provide the clues. So the way to end the game, to end the game, you need to do the mini games, but the story is way more important. And I think to answer your previous question, in that kind of game, it's not important to lure the player. I mean, on our first card, we write directly that this is based on real elements, historical facts, and we explain them during the game. At least at some parts, you can really understand what is fictional from fiction and what is not. And so when you do this kind of game, you know that you are there to learn something and to have a good time at the same time. But yeah, it's not a lie. We are not. I mean, we have other games where we say, okay, just play, and maybe you will learn something, but you are here to play. Here we say to school mostly, okay, you are here to do a visit in a different way, and you will play at the same time. So that's not a secret. Yeah.
Stefano, anytime you want to say something, just tell me, because I know sometimes you want to go for it and you don't. But Mattia, back to you. In your project, how is the story important? You said that people were frustrated because there were no rules. Did you build a huge story behind the dinosaurs, or it was really to let the people create their own stories?
Well, when we speak about stories in games, we always speak about two different stories, right? So, for example, in the game Le Baron by Loïc, or the transmedia storytelling world by Lisa, we have very clear fictional stories, like diegetic stories. But when we play a game, there is always our personal story of playing that goes together with that. And so there are some games that we will remember because we played them while outside it was raining and we were home alone, or because we just fought with our girlfriend and spent the whole night playing to think about something else. And these stories can also create very powerful memories, because of course the meaning of the game is always the result of a negotiation between our own subjectivity and experience and whatever the game creators had put in the game, right? So in this particular game, there was no story. There was no story that I put in the game, just colorful dinosaurs in the city. But my idea was that people would create stories about their experience of finding these dinosaurs. And in fact, I had a nice feedback on that, because a colleague that was not involved at all in the project and didn't know that I did this was come to me to tell me that something quite interesting happened to him the other day when he was walking, because he found this small dinosaur in the street and he picked it up for his daughter. And then when he was going home, he found another one. And so he started to look around to see if there were other dinosaurs, but he wasn't able to find any more. And he was really puzzled about why there were these dinosaurs hidden around the city. And he was quite happy that he found them and brought them to his daughter. And I resisted to tell him that it was me until he finished the story, because of course, when you're part of a secret, you immediately get excited and you want to share. But it was very interesting because I saw that for him, there was definitely a story in his experience in finding these dinosaurs. And I like to think that there are, hundreds of these little stories. There are almost 500 dinosaurs of kids and people that have found them and will remember that afternoon in which they just took so many pictures of dinosaurs in the park or whatever. And of course, again, it can be sort of frustrating because these stories are unattainable. I cannot know them, and I was very lucky already to get someone to talk to me about it without knowing that I was behind it. But I still think that these stories exist and they are important. And in fact, they are probably the most important aspect of this game, or this storyfication activity, to be more precise, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted people to engage with the environment around them, not in my terms, but in their own terms, after they just provide them, some cues, some triggers, some pretext to be playful.
Thank you, Mattia. I wanted to go into linear story and gameplay or choices, but I'll move on to another thing because you mentioned it. It's feedback, and one of the interesting questions that I asked myself when I read all your papers and when I've seen your videos, and was that all of these projects are kind of offline, even if they have AR in your project, Lisa. But people are not playing online; people are playing offline. And the first question was: is offline something you can do still in 2020? And it's also provocative to ask you this question because your project worked and are working. But do you think that you can go and find funding and find interest if you sell something that is offline in 2020? Because you took, Lisa, the example of one game that has millions of players. It's Pokemon Go, it's AR, it's on the street, but it's still online because you can meet other players and you can do stuff online. So how can you defend that offline project if someone tells you, no, it's not 2020 compatible? Who wants to go first?
Well, I think that the keyword was already mentioned by Lisa, and it is post-digital. So I truly believe that we're moving into a post-digital world, in which for a while everything that was digital was, ideologically good because we were sort of drunk with the possibilities of digital technologies. But we're sort of getting wary of those, and I guess that being confined at home, as it's the case for many of us, makes it even stronger. I mean, we all hate Zoom calls now, even when they're nice and stimulating like this one, because we just spend so much time on Zoom and we just want to go out and have a beer with people instead. And this is something we can see. For example, I worked several years ago on video games that look like they are made of paper or cardboard, or we have this Nintendo Labo sort of thing. So there is this attempt of digital game to mimicry analog aesthetics because it looks good, because we don't only want photorealistic games anymore, because we already got those. And so I think that the future of serious games and gamification is also analog, or better, is post-digital. It has to use the best of both worlds. Because in the end, even if it's a completely analog project like mine, then people take digital pictures of them and they will send them through WhatsApp. So the internet will come back because it's already so entangled with our life.
Your project works also because many people, I guess, took pictures and posted them on Instagram, for example.
Exactly. So, there is no escape from that.
Yeah, and I just have to say, to follow that up, that I think we work really hard in a lot of our projects to have these kind of, these mixed reality experiences, and are really thinking about that's, and partially because we're driven by these kind of cultural interactions in museums and artifacts and so on, that it's very easy to create, these really immersive, rich VR worlds or other things, and we all kind of go into that. But we really like the stimulation of going between these kind of material worlds, like the book and the mobile phone or something else, and kind of trying to have experiences that still are quite personal. I was thinking, Mattia, when you were talking about your project too, and now you're kind of getting to the heart of it, the interesting parts around that are all these abstractions, as you said, the individual stories that people are involved in. And sometimes you want to find ways to capture that, as you said, even if it's just with an Instagram feed or something like that. And I think when you can find those entry points so you don't lose these kinds of personal stories, it's important. But we really like, for example, just again, we do lots of workshops with kids or just events where they're just hanging around, scanning things and going out of the landscape and chatting with each other and all of that. And it's very rewarding to me, and it's rewarding to the families and to the parents that they get these kinds of activities. So I am a little skeptical. As I said, I think that, like the new digital is the real, that coming back into the real world and finding these kinds of hybrid moments is important. And I don't know, as I said, maybe because working particularly in heritage too, it's a way to remember that the user is at the center of it, and the user's stories, as you said, the ones they tell about themselves are the things we know will be the really enriching experiences, and we don't need to do, just immerse them in something else that's high technical and low experience, to me. But.
Loic?
Yeah, I do agree with both Mattia and Lisa with what they say. I think exactly the same way. What I can add maybe is that sometimes it's just a matter of development cost as well. Online could cost a lot more than offline material. And for research purposes, it could work, but in our case, for example, you work with just small museums and they don't have this money to develop platforms of, let's say, even hybrid games. They cannot afford that. So that could be a way to talk about it as well. But at the end, in our case, it was a choice to do it with cards. And we explained that in the other video again. But because the idea was that with large cards, the players, they can share it. And so one player could write directly on the suspect, and another one would have the way where you have to move the places where you go. And the other one can read the story, and the other one can do the mini games and go on, and like that. And so the idea was to bring more interaction between the players with cards, and we think that with smartphones or tablets it would have been different. And if you put only one tablet per group, then you have two school two players that will just play, and maybe the 4 others from the group, they will just watch around and they don't care. So that was important for us to have a material that can allow more players to be invested in the game.
I can also agree with you on what has been said, but still, people that are listening to us in this roundtable are maybe developing games and thinking about developing games. Can you really go to investors? Can you go to a city or a museum in 2020 saying, "Hey, cool, I'm gonna do a game for you, and it's gonna be cards like we did, I don't know, 50 years ago"? And how did that work for you? Should you not go and say, "Hey, we will do a VR, very interesting thing with smartphone, and everyone is connected, and you will see the emulation, and you will see millions of people will come"? I just want to hear how you made that, and what is your experience with the investors, with the cities, the museum, the schools? Do they listen to that, or maybe it's a question of funding, as you said, also they didn't have the money to do it, or did you choose to convince them that way?
Yeah, we choose. In our case, we choose to convince them that way. But with Entrée de Jeu, we don't do only card games. We do as well role-playing games and other kind of games, escape games and this kind of things. And so when we meet them, we say, okay, you don't need to do everything numerical. We can do something else, and that's why we are here. And we do some suggestions, and if they like it, then we work with them. You are right that the majority of their contacts, I guess, is with numerical projects yet, and not card games, for example. But so that's why they meet us. And as soon as, we don't have so many competitors yet. So for us, it's working like that. But I really think that in the future there will be more and more games. Board games, they are very well. There is a huge step that has been made during the last 20 years with board games. They are way better than what they were 50 years ago. And you have this kind of escape games that are very improved as well. And other kind of games as well, like treasure hunts. You can do them in a very different way than what it was before. And I guess it's quite innovative again.
Mattia.
And there is always people that like it.
That's for sure. And even board games have tried to be numerical, like Monopoly, for example, and it didn't really work to combine things, and people are not playing with the tablet and the board game at the same time. It's maybe one of the things that isn't working. Mattia, I don't know which were the investors exactly in your project, but did they not say you should put an NFC in each of your dinosaurs, and when people are scanning them, then they get rewards, and it's fun, and we'll locate them, and we'll know where people find dinosaurs?
Well, my funder was, in fact, a EU research funding, so I didn't have to go too much in detail. But what I did to convince them to give me the research money was to say that we need social interaction in cities. To say that, as you know, the digital is taking so much from cities because people don't need to go out to, well, do anything, not to shop, not to meet people because they have Tinder, not to read, not to, because everything is being online, and so cities are dying. And this is a problem for, local commerce, it's a problem for socialization, etc. And so you go there and you tell them, well, but play can help. Play can be a way of bringing people outside and make them discuss and talk to each other and do things together. And of course, digital play doesn't really work that way, not always and not that well, but analog play does. And you can, for example, mention the success of escape rooms that are very analog, and they are very successful right now because people need to collaborate with other people, generate their friends, and do something together, and people want to do that. And so that's what we offer you.
Lisa, how was your experience?
Yeah, I just have to say again, because we work a lot with museums and small local museums, and all of my projects. I mean, I do have bigger funded projects, but in particular with this one, the goal is really to think about sustainable solutions for the museums as well, because I mean, there's just, you can create these applications and these big worlds or whatever, but then somebody has to maintain them, and then somebody has to figure out what the next iteration for updating this, that, or the other thing, or the one person who knows how to work it or set it up leaves and goes elsewhere. So for us, it's also kind of a survival tactic, and for our investors, as I said, are often cultural stakeholders with not a lot of money, and they're happy to know that they can come up with something to do through board games or card games or mixed games. I mean, we've even have decided after a few years with this, that the mobile application that we created, and that actually you can do a lot with just QR codes and scanning QR codes that go to a simple web page, and you can create a kind of a framework that a museum can easily maintain, that doesn't have the fun, character and the graphic design and all of the kind of other stuff. But again, it's so much about the game and the story and the interaction that you create, and it's much easier for them, and they're actually quite pleased. Although often they'll come and they'll say, okay, we have 4 iPads and XXX, and so now we want the iPad game. And it's like, we don't really start from that way. We start from another way, and just because you have these 4 iPads now doesn't mean we have to fill them up with something else. So it's a continual conversation. It's great when we have more money and funding to do other things, but they still end up often, especially with grant funded applications, they end up, once the project is over, they just go into the grant application technology graveyard, and on they are. So
one last thing about offline, then I'll move to another subject. The difficulty maybe of your all offline projects is feedback. How can you see that people are playing? How can you see that your games are working until, I don't know, stage 4, stage 5, level 2, level 3 on a platform? It's easy. You can see where players are going out. You can see, you can improve, you can change. How did you do in your projects to be sure that it worked? That's the first thing. And then what worked in it? And did you adapt? Did you do some changes? I'll go back to you, Lisa.
Yeah, I would just have to say that this is where it really takes a village, because it's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of just old-fashioned hands-on stalking people while they're playing and watching and asking questions, and as I say, going into workshops and getting feedback directly from kids about what they're learning or creating. Creating this network of museums and libraries and schools, people you can keep going back and asking the questions. Did you use them? Did the kids like them? Are they the book publishers, are they buying them? Are you selling them? Are we giving them away? Like just constantly kind of feeding in that way. And it's a lot of work. And that's why this project, the club project anyway, we're in our, I don't know which year we're in now, but we're in the second phase of maybe in year 5 or 6 or something now. And again, it's a huge amount of people who are involved in different circumstances, but it takes a lot of people and conversations and ongoing relationships and just old-fashioned legwork, like going around chatting with people, holding yearly seminars, inviting people back into the office. And I don't know, it's tough. Sometimes I do wish you could push a button and just say, I wonder how that's working, but it doesn't. I don't know, it's a lot. Unfortunately, we have a lot of really engaged people, both at the university but in the community, who give us a lot of feedback along the way and pass things along word of mouth.
Loic, how was it for you to have a feedback, to know whenever people are not playing? You said the game is between 1 hour 30 and 2 hour 30. It's quite a long game.
Yeah.
How do you know that people are not quitting the game after 20 minutes each time at the same stage because they don't find the clue that you put in the game?
Well, we have made tests first, and so we iterate during the game design, and so the creation has been made in there's like test iteration rounds to create it. But then at the end we do not have this information for all the groups. We know with classes, schools, we know that they do the whole game, but for tourism, we have not this kind of indication. And I would say that's something that could have been added in the game. We were talking about having kind of object that they have to give back at the end, the tourism information. So you can ask them question and get maybe 3 or 5 minutes with the players and to see if they like the experience. But at the end, we don't have that, and that's, I think you touch on the where it hurts, because for what we do yet, I mean, when we are involved in research, let's say public research projects, then we can have the funding for that. And in the let's say private sector, sometimes you have no funding, and the debriefing and feedback is quite always what is missing. And we try to sell it and to be more clever about that. But at the end, when they don't have the money, they say, okay, let's do the game, and for the rest we'll see later. And later is later. And so that's quite sad. And I really try to sell this kind of feedbacks I won't say, I'm not trying to selling hours of work to get feedbacks, but just to think about it and to get a way to collect feedbacks. It could be just do some phone calls sometimes, or this kind of thing. And it's hard to get that. So I would say, because we are between friends here, but I'm quite disappointed with that, because I don't have the feedbacks that I would like.
Thank you for the honesty, because I think it's also something that is hard to have, even on online games, because there are also some issues about having some data on some of the games. Mattia, you've walked all around the streets, I guess, of Temporary, a lot of time to see where your dinosaurs were, but still, how did you do your research feedback?
Mm-hmm. Well, on the one side, yes, I went through the city several times to see if the dinosaurs were still there. Some stayed there all the winter, also because it snowed at a certain point, so a few of them were sort of covered by snow for a while. Others were just a bit too well hidden, so it took more time before people found them. but I would say that the largest part of them were found in the first week. So, I know that someone took them. I don't know what happened after that. But I got feedback from the participants, so from the people that were actually distributing the dinosaurs. I had a survey, and as I know them pretty well, I forced them to reply, and if they were late, just continue to ask until they did. It was quite interesting because most of them agreed that in the weeks after the game, they continued to look at the city in a different way, either because they were also looking if their dinosaurs were still there, either because they sort of got the habit of thinking of things like the colors of the city, which was something I didn't anticipate, but many said that as the dinosaurs are of different colors, they also look, for places of the same or different colors to put them. And they sort of noticed that. And for a few weeks, they continued to notice these sort of things, and also small details and, what would be a great spot to hide a dinosaur if you just had one, which was kind of fun. But again, and this is a problem with most games and gamification activities, then it's not something that lasts forever. It might last, 2 or 3 weeks if you're lucky. And after that, you need to do something else. Otherwise, it's already lost. But that's play, because if you transform it in something ordinary, if it becomes routine, that is not playful anymore. So that's, the big issue with what we are doing, that to keep interest, we need to propose new games and new playfulness and new things to do.
If you're okay with it, I would like to take the discussion a little bit further away from your projects. Maybe not yours, Mattia, because I'll come to the question. Maybe you've noticed this experiment that was made. It was in Brussels, it was in Stockholm, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. People were not taking the staircases in subways. And so they put like huge notes of music, like a piano keyboard on the staircase, and they made people go up the staircase, and it made the sound of the piano at each step. And there was a huge amount of people taking the staircase because they gamified the staircase and not the elevator and the rolling automated one. But the question that I want to ask around this experiment, and maybe around yours, Mattia, is, do you think that this gamified experience, the notes of music, that could they last? So if the notes are every time here, people will still take them because it's more fun than the elevator? Or even if you take out the keyboard, would people keep going up the stairs? So there's just 2 questions. Is the game changing habits at a long time, and can a game last a long time? We know games that we are playing since we were kids. Catch me if you can. You can even do it with adults. It works. So are games kind of eternal, and can you make them eternal? As like your dinosaurs, could you do it every time? You just told us no, but maybe I'll come back to you. And yeah, secondly, can it make us change our habits or our behaviors on a strong, really way? So maybe the first question, can they last forever? Mattia, you already said no, but maybe you want to...
Yeah, I don't think they can, because you need at least to change something. So, you can play hide and seek all your life, but if people hide always in the same places, it gets very boring very quickly. And that's more or less the same problem with the piano staircase. It's fun the first time, that 100 times is just annoying, and you will choose to take the escalator, so not to hear this horrible music that many people do because they don't really play, they're just going up and down. So this is something I taught a lot while working in urban gamification. And I think that the only solution would have several of these things moving at all times. So you get, 1 week of the piano staircase, and then the next week you have another project from Fine Theories, like the world's deepest bin, that a garbage bin that if you throw something, it goes. But also for a week, because otherwise it will be boring, and then something else needs to come. If you always have the same thing, it gets, it is not really sustainable. And that's, again, I think the big challenge that we have with games. Because even very successful games, like you mentioned, Pokemon Go, there are not that many people that play Pokemon Go anymore. There are many, for example, in Finland, etc., and Niantic, and continue to try to make new things and change and create more interaction with players, etc. exactly because it gets boring after a while, because it's always the same thing in the end. And yeah, so I think that no, games are not eternal in the sense that you cannot play them in the same time all the time. What's eternal is playfulness. I mean, we are playful from 1 to 99 years, as Lego set boxes say, probably also after. So what we need to tap into is the will of people to be playful, and not necessarily a single implementation of playfulness and gamefulness.
Lisa, how are you seeing that
Yeah.
matter? Because you said your project has been already there for 6 years. Will it last 20 more?
Well, but the thing is, it's been there in that, but it's mutated over time. You know, we're building it. That's why we had to add a board game, and that's why we had to make a scavenger hunt in the museum, and that's why we put more signage around the city and created new. Like it has to iteratively mutate into something else, because I do think, even though, I mean, games can be eternal. You know, you can play tag, or you can play chess, or you can do, and it can last, but it's the players are not eternal, and that's the problem. You know, there's a reason why in the office, you know, a group of adults are not running around playing catch and tag with each other all the time. We do that in our child. You know, there's specific moments in time where we create a social context where it's fine to go around and do that and play that, and you know, they're contextualized in these kind of social situations. So I do think you have to change them. I was literally just talking about that staircase piano thing yesterday with one of my game designer colleagues, and saying, I don't know, we were being a little, again, dismissive about it for exactly that reason, that there are various versions of that around, you know, where you can change these elements of the city to make them playful, and they're great when they pull us out of ourselves. And all of a sudden, as you say, like even with the dinosaurs, you see the dinosaurs sitting next to the little river, the stream, or whatever, and all of a sudden you get a new way of thinking about the size or the scale of that little puddle that you never noticed before, or something else. And they're great. And but every time I walk past that, I'm not going to go, whoa, how wonderful. You know, it's going to happen to me a couple times, and then I'm going to move on. So again, you have to have a scale to think about that. So great to have, not going to last forever. How's it going to change? Where will it be reapplied? Or can you depend on the fact that you'll have so many new users coming all the time that you'll always have a new way of thinking about it?
Yeah, Stefano.
I think also it depends from the games, because a serious game, you have a goal, so you want to teach something. So in the case, for example, that you want to teach the history of La Chaux-de-Fonds, maybe playing once is enough. You don't want to have something eternal, because the objective is to understand something. It's not always the case. But sometimes you want just to teach. If the objective is to teach a simulation or to do some job, once that is done, I think it's okay that the player will stop playing. I think the goal is reached, so it's okay. In the case of the piano, there is also in the serious game literature, also in gamification, we talk a lot about extrinsic and intrinsic reward. And the idea is that when you provide a reward to the player, and then you keep it away, the player will stop playing. Also, if it was enjoying before the game in itself. So in this sense, in the piano games, the idea was to teach people that they have to take the stairs, but it was not the reward wasn't really related to that. So they can forget and be annoyed and so on. So I think, yeah, there are several scenarios that you have to consider.
I'm having fun with this roundtable, but we will soon be at the end. There's one of my major question. I kept it for the end because it's more fun like that, and it's also a kind of game for me. Now the thing is, you all said about your projects, and it's seen in every like serious game for the last years that I followed this specific topic. The serious game is always a complementary way of visiting, or it's another way of seeing things. Could serious games be the way, the one? Maybe the tourists are all playing serious games, and maybe one wants a conventional tour with a guided person. Do you think that that might be possible? Because we've always said, and I have created also serious games, and I have also said the same thing. That's another way of doing something. Could serious games be the way, the one, and maybe the only one of doing something? Or are serious games doomed to be the nice way, the way for the kids, the other way, the fun way that would not last forever, but still it's fun and still has a little bit of money coming in? Should it not be for some of the things, for example, a museum built on a serious game? And that's going to be my final tour of your brilliant answers. Loic.
I would love to see that museum that is built for, let's say, they want to create a escape game, and yeah, they create a museum with that. I would love that, and maybe once we'll see it, hopefully, yeah. But I think your question is, we have to talk about the different kind of public. And some people, they don't like to play. They don't want to play because when they play, they are in interaction with other people, and maybe they don't like that first, but maybe they don't like to watch other people watching them playing, and so sometimes they're quite shy, or they don't want to lose the game, or whatever reason. And so some people, they won't like that, and they need another way to get serious content that is not gamified. I really think so, that. And there are many kind of public, and yeah, you can do the same game for all the public. So if you want to address all the publics with games, serious games, then you need many kind of games at the same place to be sure to reach everybody. And that's quite hard. I don't think there is one kind of game that could work in one place for old people and for children at the same time. And maybe it will work once with some kind of families, but then you will have different kind of families that won't like it. And so you need to bring another kind of game for them, and that could work. And I think it's too complicated in that direction.
Thank you, Loic. And I understand that, but when a museum commissioner does an exhibit, it's the same. It maybe won't fit anyone or everyone on the same way. What do you think about that, Lisa?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a really interesting question, but I think it gets at the heart of thinking about what a game is then. Like, is a game something, by nature of what it is it going to remove you into some other place? Because it makes me just think about, are we talking about just creating a simulation versus a game or something else? I don't really know. I don't know how to think about something that, like you said, just is the thing. I don't know. I mean, it's a lovely question that's hard to answer in the remaining 2 minutes. That I'll probably come up with something, but I'm not really sure.
I'll let you to it. Maybe Mattia has something to say about that.
Well, I will answer your question with another question. I mean, do we want that to be the case? Do we want playfulness to be the standard way of doing things? Because I believe that what is interesting about play, at least for me, is exactly because it goes against the normal reality. It allows you to do other things. It allows you to pretend, to imagine, to behave in a way that would be impossible to behave every day. We cannot only play all the time. Otherwise, we become Don Quixote. We think that windmills are giants and everybody thinks we're crazy. So I think that the power of play is exactly because it creates these bubbles in which everything is possible and you can look at things in a different way. And if we pop the bubble because we want everything to become play, it ends up just becoming another reality, maybe a bit more schizophrenic than the one we have now. So maybe we don't want play to be the standard way of looking at things and doing things and visiting cities, but we want to keep it as maybe the most interesting way of doing things, exactly because it's a critical way of doing things. It goes beyond the status quo. It goes beyond what is ordinary and normal.
I could live with that, but it was really we also say it's the alternative, and sometimes I hate this term because maybe the alternative should be the main thing, not the only, but maybe the main, and I haven't seen that either, so maybe we will if we are strong enough in our belief in serious gaming. Lisa, do you have a final word? And if you don't, I will end on that. No, that's okay. You've talked a lot also, and I would like to thank you all three authors and everyone that was with us today. I hope you had a great time. I did really. It was a very interesting time for me. I hope it was for you too. Thank you, of course.
Yes, and thank you, Julian. You were a wonderful moderator. The discussion was really very interesting, much more interesting than I expected. So that the credit also goes to you and of course to Lisa and Lloyd. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, the same for me. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
We'll leave you the mic, and we'll have one more next week.
Yes.
Next one. Yes.
See you next week.
See you then. Thank you, Julian. I think also that your questions are really great. It's very difficult sometimes to find an answer, a good answer to you. So it's very great. And so I want to thank everybody that was here today. And I hope again to see you again the next week for the last session of this virtual edition. So,
and thank you, Stefano, for sharing.
You're welcome, Mattia.
Take care. Play well.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.